Okay, to give it a start, my name is Julia. I'm working at the Vice Presidency for Innovation at EPFL, where I'm the deputy of the Vice President. And I'm also heading an initiative called Tech for Impact, where we basically seek, and this is our biggest aim, to leverage EPFL technologies for addressing social and environmental problems. And throughout this short little lecture, what I will be doing is I'll start with a little introduction on why does sustainability matter, and this will be rather brief because if you've self-selected your into this track, I assume that you already have this concern or share this concern. And then I'll talk a little bit more about how does EPFL address this, this notion of sustainability with its Tech for Impact initiative and beyond with our different programs at EPFL. To give it a start and to test whether you're all capable, and I'm sure you are, in using your chat, let's start with this picture. And what I would invite you to do is just let me know, what do you see on this picture? And try to be as specific as possible. There are no right or wrong answers. Just shoot me all your ideas of what you can see in this picture. Be brave and bear with me. The Earth, yeah, very good, thank you. And the void, yeah. What else do we see? Clouds, continent, Africa, Madagascar, it's true. Africa, yeah. The Earth and the space, very important point. We see the space as well, yeah. Ocean, a lot of water actually, it's true. Our planet is mostly occupied with water and the ocean are the largest parts of it, it's true. Okay, I think we have a lot of the aspects that I would like to actually hint you towards. Any idea before I elaborate a little bit on why I chose this picture, on when this picture has been taken, in which year? If you have an idea, and it doesn't have to be right, if just your idea, your assumption, when do you think this picture has been taken, in which year? And again, you can use the chat for this. 2012? There are newer versions of this picture, but let me specify my question. When was the first time that this picture has been taken? That is very close, Andre. Yeah. So Andre is the closest. It's actually in 1972 by the Apollo 17 crew, which was back then in space and took this picture. And it was one of the first pictures where we really could see our entire planet like this, because the sun was standing behind the space shuttle and basically was really putting the Earth in the spotlight almost. And I think you pinpointed very important aspects of this picture. And this is what this picture shows is this is our planet. We see continents there. I think what is important to highlight here, what I feel always important to highlight, is there are continents, but there are no borders. And if you think about when this picture was taken, we had the time of the Vietnam war, excuse me. It was not so far from the world wars. And basically it was important to highlight there actually, it's our Earth, it's our planet, there are no borders. We share this planet together. It's limited. I think this is also a very important aspect. It's not that we have limitless opportunities to grow. We have a rather defined space. Somebody wrote, we have Earth and space, and this is very much true. What we can see is there's the Earth and there's a lot of nothing around us, which I think is also important to highlight, because in many ways, when we talk about sustainability, there's often this idea, if we screw up this planet, let's just go to the next planet. I think what we see in this picture is there's not really a planet B just around the corner. It's not like we could easily just all venture onto the next planet and destroy this one, but maybe we need to take care of our own planet. And back then, actually, this picture, which is one of the most iconic ones in human history, steered many environmental movements. So it started in the US, but really all around the world, this picture really showed us, Earth is really vulnerable, it's fragile, it's limited, and we need to protect it. And so this was a very important aspect in this whole sustainability and environmental activism stage. However, a couple of years later down the road, 50 years later, what we see is we actually have many, many problems that need to be addressed. Before we continue, I would like to do a little game with you. I will start a little poll that I ask you to answer. Let me check. Again, there are no right or wrong answers. If you could just take a minute to answer the poll that should have been launched on your screen. We should not take too much time for this, but literally just whatever you think is the right answer without Googling. And if you can just submit your results. Yeah, I have the results coming in. I'll wait another 30 seconds for all of you to submit your answers. Okay, we have 75%. I'll give you another 10 seconds. If you haven't submitted yet, please feel free to submit now. Okay, let's end it here. I'll stop the survey now. And I will share the results with you. You should now see that on your screens as well. If not, I'll also walk you through this. In the first question I asked you, in the last 20 years, the proportion of the world population living in extreme poverty has it almost doubled, remained more or less the same, or almost halved? The majority of you, 50%, say it has almost doubled. And I think it's interesting that quite a good proportion of your group actually said it almost halved, which is interesting because this is the correct answer. In most of the polls that I launched, this is actually not many people. Yesterday, we had one person that actually came up with this result. So it's quite a significant number of people in your group that came up with this. It's true. This, the number of people living in extreme poverty, which is defined to live between $1.20 and $1.90 a day. It depends a little bit on which organization defines it. It's not much, $1.20 to $1.90 a day. But this proportion has significantly halved over the last 20 years. So this is correct. And this is a very good sign. I assume that something that we will see a little bit of an increase in maybe next year due to the COVID situation, which has increased the problems in some areas. But this is, and first of all, it's a good sign. Then we have in all low-income countries across the world today, how many girls finish primary school? The majority of you says 20%, which is not correct actually, and the minority says 60%, which is the correct result. I guess it's a little bit surprising. I actually was not answering this question correctly as well. I think I said 40%, but it's actually 60%. According to the World Bank, in 2015, it was 63% of girls worldwide in low-income countries, which I think, again, is a good news. And lastly, we have how did the number of deaths per year from natural disasters change over the last 100 years? And basically what we have the majority saying it's more than doubled. And again, the minority says decreased to less than half, which is the right answer. By now you probably get the pattern. Why I do this exercise, it's based on a book called Factfulness from Hans Rösling. You can Google it if you like. It's a very interesting and insightful book, which basically says in many ways, often our thinking around the world is based on our gut feeling. And often we also have a negativity bias. So we think that things are worse than they really are. Whereas some of the most crucial developments actually, we're not too bad, we're advancing. And I think this is an important message. So because I will be talking a lot about the sustainability problems, I also want to tell you, we've did some progress over the last years, 100 years specifically, and we're on a good way. It doesn't mean that our development is finished yet, but we are on a good way. And I think this is something to also keep in mind. And it also helps me to make my next point. I think in many ways, if you look at the slide, this is what is happening around the world at the moment. So there's a lot of distrust in scientific facts, whether in a positive or negative sense. In many ways, our thinking is very much driven by how we feel the world could look like, or by fake news, by populists who try to push their own agenda. I think in many ways we know nowadays that global warming is true. The vast majority of scientific facts actually hint to this. It's over 98% of studies that actually say global warming is real. So this is, it's not just an insignificant number. There's no balance. It's absolutely true that this is real. And this is something where a university, where studies are very important to produce these scientific facts. And another important point is to actually make them accessible to the general public as well. It doesn't help if our researchers are all very enlightened, if our students are all very enlightened. It's a very important task to kind of disseminate this knowledge and make it accessible so that people can make informed decisions and actually know what is happening around the world. I won't go into much detail about the problems because, as I mentioned, I know that that your generation is very much enlightened about all these problems that we're having. Let me say just some buzzwords like CO2 pollution. We have global warming. We have problems with our soil, and I'll go into a bit detail. What all of these pictures show, in a sense, is basically that that we are reaching kind of limitations, the boundaries of our planet that I showed in the first picture, where we said it's actually limited. We have limited resources, and what does this actually mean for us as a species? You've probably heard about the term peak oil, which signifies the theorized point in time when the number of oil, or sorry, the amount of oil you can extract from planet Earth has been reached. And after that, the extraction of oil enters terminal decline. Why? Because it's a non-renewable resource. It's not indefinite. We cannot extract oil for the rest of our lives. There is a certain amount, and actually our generations and our consumption behavior relates to or results in an effect where we extract much more than the planet can actually supply. I think this is the more known part, peak oil. I think what people often don't know is peak water, that we're actually reaching a peak of how much fresh water we can access. This is actually a very, very important problem. While oil, the problem is that most of our production and consumption is based on oil. Obviously, water is what we really need to survive as a human species. If you think about that, this is something that is a problem that is very far from us. It's actually not. We've seen this in California for many years already, that they reached the limits of freshwater supply. But we even saw it in Germany last year when we had a very dry period, that basically in some villages you were not allowed to water your garden anymore because they reached the limits to fresh water. Very important problem. Other problems, peak sand. You would probably argue that we have the desert and there's so much sand, but there are differences in sand and how sand is constituted. And the sand that we need for building and for many of our production processes is actually also reaching a limit. With the extreme example that I like to bring, Singapore, which is an island and would like to continuously grow because they're so successful, they're now even stealing, quote unquote, sand from Indonesian islands that are not inhabited, where basically no people live, to grow their island even further. So we are at a point in time where sand becomes a very precious resource and a limited one as well. And then a very important problem as well is peak soil that I want to highlight here. This is due to our very much our monoculture, where we basically grow food that has the highest return on investments. Let's say, for instance, palm oil or avocados. We just continue producing one type of food, and thereby the soil is eradicated. And this is a big problem because if you think about it, our population is growing and growing and growing. We already have, as the example of the extreme poverty and world hunger has shown, we already have problems of feeding the entire world. And now what we're actually having, or what we're seeing here, is that maybe in the future we will have real problems in kind of supplying our world with basic food. I'm not saying that to kind of create a negative image. What I'm saying is that all of these problems constitute opportunities for you as students to choose a subject that basically can address all of these problems. And even if you go into the basic sciences, we at EPFL, we're trying to provide many opportunities for you to get involved in kind of tackling these issues as well. I'll leave a question and answer for the end of this session, but if you have questions throughout these slides, feel free to use the chat function. If you want to comment on something, if you have a question, feel always free to use the chat also while I'm talking. And if I'm too fast, you can also raise your hand and say, I need to slow down because this is a common problem with me. What all of these examples show is that in many ways, the lifestyle that we have been enjoying many years, we can say it's out of stock. We have lived basically on the resources too much, and basically we're now the future generations, your generation, but also your children, your grandchildren, actually will face very serious problems. So we need to rethink how we consume, how we produce. And all of this means we need to really fundamentally change our way of doing things. Who of you has seen these? And I'll turn on a little bit the camera. Who of you has seen this? And if you can just use the thumb up icon in your Zoom, so I can see who of you has seen these goals that I put on the slide here. If you've seen them before, just put up your thumb up on your icon that you should find in Zoom. Maria has seen it. Anyone else? Andre, yeah. And in fact, I think this is quite a common outcome of this my little survey here, and I tell you why. If you look at these goals, what we will see here is these are the Millennium Development Goals. As the name implies, they have been around millennium, so 2000 that they came into being. And this was also an international agenda trying to push for sustainability topics, social and environmental issues. But if you look closely at these Millennium Development Goals, what you see is they're very much focused on countries, and I don't like the term, and I'll explain in a second why, but on developing countries. I don't like this term because if we refer to countries like Switzerland, Germany, Austria, America, as developed countries, it implies that we're at the end of our development. And I fundamentally disagree. If we look at our negative impact on the planet with respect to our consumption and production behavior, I think we are the developing countries. We are the ones who need to change our behaviors. So I don't like this term developing countries, but for the sake of clarity, this very much refers to countries located in the global south who have to fight with extreme poverty and access to food, access to healthcare, and all of these problems. What is the problem with that? Because in a sense, this is a nice agenda, right? If we want to help other countries. I think the biggest problem is this kind of helping approach where we think we're not part of the problem, but we are only part of the solution and we need to help others. And obviously it's nice to feel like the hero in the story, but as I mentioned before, I think it's not true. And this is where the next slide basically tried to address this issue. And now I would like to see those of you who have seen these before to give me a thumb up with your icons as well. If you have seen these goals before, please give me a thumb up. Yeah, this is what I would have expected. Much more people put their thumbs up because I think this is also from a communication standpoint, we have seen many more of the Sustainable Development Goals than before. So the Sustainable Development Goals, what make them so special is actually that they are really all-encompassing. They're very holistic. They're not just focused on the global south, but they equally address our countries as well. If you think about, let's say, climate action, goal number 13, it addresses us equally as it addresses all the other countries. The same is true to gender equality. This is a problem we still have in Western countries as well. The same is true for peace, justice, and strong institutions. All of these are actually goals that we all the countries around the world can basically stand behind and where we all need to work on ourselves. It's actually a very historical agreement because it's for the first time that all the countries of the United Nations basically signed this and said, yes, this is an agenda, the Agenda 2030, that we all agree that this is important and where we want to work on ourselves to achieve these goals. In many ways, this agenda is also special because it was created with the help of the public actors, of communities, of students. It was a very collaborative approach to developing these, really taking into consideration that this is an agenda that we can all buy into, and this is our agenda as a species, not just as one country. For me, I also see this as a set of opportunities, right? If you think about it, whatever you want to study, in whatever you have in mind, what you would like to study, I would say almost every field you can address this. I mean, basic science may be a bit more difficult, but almost all the other fields, life science, if you're thinking of SV, life science, number 3 is your goal. If you're thinking about studying anything related to energy, number 7 is your goal. If you're thinking about STI, so engineering, industry, innovation, infrastructure is your goal. So basically, we can fit in our studies into this as well. And it's almost like we can see how we can have the biggest impact as ourselves and as students. However, this is not business as usual. This is not where we basically find a predetermined set of, this is what we have to do to achieve these. We need to be very creative, very innovative to achieve this agenda. And basically, this is where I think for you as a young generation, you could really bring in all your brain power and all your passion to basically identify new ways of doing things. And this is actually an advantage, because if you think about it in many ways, previous generations, when they entered the workforce, the market, their careers, they always had these elderly generations that knew how to do things and they had to learn, and then all of this. To achieve the Agenda 2030 and to have more sustainable innovation and entrepreneurship, we actually need your creativity, and we need the young generation to think differently, to think outside the box. What is the role of technology, and what is the role of a technological university like EPFL in all of this? And I will move from more abstract to concrete. So the next slides, I will provide concrete examples as well. And again, feel free to ask questions or comments throughout the chat. On the one hand, technology allows and is a key driver of innovation. Why? If you think about the Industrial Revolution, think about digitalization, technology has always been the key driver for bringing up new innovations. Similarly, technology is a lot about speed. Technology can be employed in just a second all around the world. So this is something very important. Local solutions, if we think about sustainability, that require a lot of manpower, they are often very timely. If you think about, yes, we need to change consumer behavior, for instance, and this is the solution to sustainability, which many people claim it is. And I think it's just one part of the total solution. But this is very, very lengthy. Changing consumer behavior, or any kind of behavior, is always a lengthy process. Introducing a new technology can be done within days. Okay, then somebody needs to adopt the technology, but it's still much shorter than everything else that we have as a tool. Another thing is that in many ways, when we think about sustainability in the past, it was often that sustainable solutions were the high price solutions. Think about organic food versus conventional food. Technology can really help to make all these solutions more affordable to a large mass of people. And then lastly, and this is also very important, when we think about the Agenda 2030, we have 10 years left. It's not much. The agenda is very ambitious. It's just 10 years left to reach it. And then we face serious problems if we don't reach it. Nothing scales as quickly and as much as technology does. I already mentioned that in comparison to behavioral changes, but think about a technology developed in Switzerland that could be employed in other countries. You can easily deploy a social media platform throughout the world. You don't need much for this. So technology, nothing scales as quickly as technology. Now I invite you to open the chat window again, a little game. Just to show you the importance of how technology is changing entire industries. At this second, not linked to sustainability, but just to give you the notion of technology as a major disruptor of industries. Who is the world's largest accommodation provider who does not own any real estate? What do you think? And you can just use the chat function again and again. No holding back. There are no right or wrong answers. There is in this case a right answer, but it's no problem if you don't get it right at the first time. I'm sure you have used this provider already. So most of you will probably have used it before. If you think about it in the past, how did we book our holidays? We used hotels. Who is now in the driver's seat when it comes to, Andre, you have it, yeah, Airbnb. The largest accommodation provider who doesn't own any real estate is Airbnb. This is quite a change. Think about it. I mean, back in the days, it was those companies like Hilton and others that had the real estate in the best locations. And nowadays, the largest accommodation provider doesn't even have one single real estate. Similarly, what is the world's largest taxi company that doesn't own any vehicle? And again, I'm sure you have used it before. What do you think? Erwin, absolutely right. And now we have several coming in. All of you are absolutely right. It's Uber. If you think about it, again, a crazy movement. Back in the days, it was who had the biggest fleet of cars and throughout availability that would kind of dominate the market. And nowadays, the biggest provider of taxi services doesn't even own one single car. Very interesting movement. Next one. What is the world's most popular media owner who doesn't create any own content? And again, I would assume you're a frequent user, or at least, yeah, absolutely. Facebook is absolutely correct. And Twitter is for sure, Simon, very, very close. So Facebook, I mean, think about it as again, journalism was a real, it was a real career, and you had to study for years, and you had to triangulate the fact 400 times. And now everybody can just create their own content for the good and the bad. So there are some dark sides to this as well, but just saying how technology can disrupt an entire industry in no second, right? In just a couple of years, an entire industry is almost completely in upheaval. I think the last one is very difficult. It's not Amazon, it's a Chinese one. It's the most valuable retailer who has no inventory. Any idea? Alibaba, exactly, Matthew. This is absolutely right. It's a difficult one. But again, think about it. It's a retailer who has not one single inventory. And I think, again, all of these movements just show us how technology can be very disruptive. And the question now is, how can we use this disruptive potential to address sustainability causes? And here are just some examples. And I'm highlighting, this is just really a very, very short selection of examples, because at EPFL we have so many examples. I'll come back to this in the next slide. One example is Bloom Biorenewables. Feel free to Google them if you're interested in this. This is a solution that from chemistry, biochemistry, where basically they find that lignin, which is used as a waste product nowadays, it's basically treated as a waste product. We don't attach much value to it. They found a way to valorize it. In other ways, they use a waste product that nobody saw any value in the past, and use it for production processes, so that we have less waste in our production circles. It's actually a very, very smart way to do so. Then the same is true for LC3, which is by our professor Karen Scrivener, and it's a special form of cement, where basically she uses also local available resources to have the cement that is much, much less CO2 intense. And what is very special about this, it's a very hypothetical scenario that I'm introducing now, but if her cement would be implemented around the world for all construction works, which is obviously, it's not feasible, but just think about it, bear with me. So if this cement would be used around the world, she claims that we can reduce our worldwide CO2 emission by 2%. And this is fundamental if you think about it. One technology could reduce the worldwide CO2 emissions by 2%. If you make the calculation, this means we just need 50 disruptive technologies of this sort, and all our CO2 problems are solved. It sounds like science fiction if you think about the discussions around CO2, but actually think about it. This is the role of the technology can play, and then basically none other solution from my perspective can play. These were more the environmental examples, but we also have some social ones. These are from our Essential Tech Center. Essential Tech is a center at EPFL that focuses on low-income countries that have difficulties accessing, basically paying for basic solutions. And these are the ones that face severe challenges when it comes to accessing healthcare. And they focus on solutions for these markets, and they work with many, many labs at EPFL and very interdisciplinary. And for instance, what a very powerful example is their X-ray machine. And their X-ray machine is very special because it's very robust. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance. It has a very secured electrical power set, which is actually something that is very difficult. This stable electricity supply in developing countries is very difficult to achieve. And now their X-ray machine is so good and so outperforming that basically even the Swiss people would like to have this X-ray machine, which costs like a fraction of today's X-ray machines. So they also don't say we're developing solutions for low-income countries. They always refer to the solutions as smart tech. And I find this very beautiful because actually it's not about trying to develop solutions that are inferior to our solutions, but rather they develop almost solutions that are superior to our solutions because they think very smartly about it, so that these solutions actually provide value for our markets as well. Another example that I have here is their incubator that at the moment makes a lot of news. It goes through all the press, and it's a baby incubator, which is very robust. It's high tech. It has all the functions that our baby incubators as well, but very, very low cost. The problem is not that we haven't seen these solutions in the past. The problem was that oftentimes we went into this with a mindset that we have the perfect working technology here in Switzerland, Germany, America, and now you in Africa, you should use the exact same solution. What is the problem with this is we don't understand the reality on site. If they don't have stable electricity, if they have no one who can repair these incubators, then they're of no use for the people on site, right? Of no use. And this is why they developed something that we say human-centered design. They start with the knowledge of the local problems first, and then they develop solutions to this, instead of coming with a pre-developed technology and pushing it to the markets. Okay, again, these are just some examples. What we did was a study, and I think this is very important for you, where we basically mapped EPFL's contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. And what we found is that out of the 350 labs at EPFL, 190 address at least one of the Sustainable Development Goals. That's way more than half of our laboratories that all work on at least one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think this is massive. This is very important. And look at the figure on the top right. What you see here is basically that all our faculties, independent of what you study, basically address at least one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And even a multitude of Sustainable Development Goals. Think about STI, engineering. They almost address every single Sustainable Development Goal. And basically what we see is that EPFL is particularly strong in SDG 3, which is health and well-being. It's not surprising. This is where our SV faculty is well known for the solutions. We are very strong in SDG 7. This is renewable energy. We have a very strong energy center here at EPFL as well, and we're actually piloting many energy solutions where we have living laboratories on our campus where you can see the solutions, where we test and experiment with these solutions on our campus. And then we have SDG 9, which is industry innovation infrastructure. Here's where STI is particularly strong, and where engineering solutions, where we see many material science solutions coming in. But again, as you can see, really EPFL kind of addresses all of these SDGs, and whatever SDG you're passionate about, whatever study program you're passionate about, I'm sure we can find a link to match these. Again, please always interrupt me. You can unmute yourself at any time. I have no problems with that, and ask a question or put it in the chat if that is more comfortable for you. One thing that I think is important to highlight, and you will not hear that too often from someone promoting their tech university, but I think it's still important to say. I don't believe that technology is a silver bullet to solve all our world's problems. No, it's not true. I think technology is a very important factor, but it doesn't mean that technology will solve all our problems overnight. And what is more, and I think this is also important, while it contributes to many of the positive developments that we would like to see, and I try to provide some examples of this, there's also a risk that comes with new technologies, right? And I'll just mention a couple of these. You've for sure heard about Cambridge Analytica, where technology was used to kind of influence in a way that has been unseen in the past election processes in the US and in the UK, and for sure in other countries as well, where basically masses of data have been used to influence people to vote in a certain direction. We know that a big problem nowadays is that we actually gather much more data than we actually need. We have a surplus of data, and if you've probably seen Netflix, The Social Dilemma, if not, I encourage you to do so. It's very intriguing. If you watch The Social Dilemma, you can see that nowadays many social media platforms know more about ourselves than we know, or they know better which decision we're going to take than we know. What is more is they know how to influence our decisions. And I think this is where it becomes a little bit worrying, and where also we as a tech universities, we should be at the forefront of helping to prevent these and help to develop solutions. And actually we have many examples of professors working on solutions for this, which I think is very important. We have interesting think tanks here at EPFL where professors come together acknowledging that these problems exist and trying to figure out solutions. fake news, you probably know about, I'm pretty sure you know about the spread of fake news, propaganda, that this has some very negative side effects. And then we have this whole problem of transparency, and transparency issues and digital trust. How do we build trust in online settings? This just a couple, obviously most related to digital technologies, but we have similar problems with all kind of technologies. Think about robotics, where the exact same technology that can help to facilitate many of our lives, it can also be used in war or in other scenarios where it becomes really against our best interest of society. So in many ways, I think the same technology, and this is an important takeaway, the very same technology that can be used to achieve a fantastic positive impact can, in the wrong hands or used wrongly, also have a negative side effect. And this is something your generation will for sure play an important role in kind of engineering these solutions that actually benefit society. And this is where I like to say we're trying to develop not just engineers at EPFL, but social engineers. In other words, we're trying that students are aware that that what they do and what they develop actually affect society in certain ways. And obviously we try to create those global leaders that positively affect our nature and society. One thing I want to highlight is we always try to invite very inspiring keynote speakers to EPFL. And this is Yuval Harari. You probably know him because he's very famous for his book, 21st Solutions for the 21st Century and Sapiens. And we invited him to EPFL last year when we had a full Swiss Tech Convention Center, where we would have welcomed you if you would be able to join us on campus this year, which was unfortunately not possible. And before that, for instance, we had Muhammad Yunus, who is a Nobel Prize Peace Laureate. And what these people help us is really to broaden the mind of our researchers and our students. And here he said something very powerful. He said, who controls data will control the future of humanity and of life. And I think this is something, it's actually a little bit scary, because who controls data at the moment are the Google, the Facebook, Instagram as Facebook. So basically, these are the big tech companies that control data at this stage. And this is something where, if this becomes the major controlling factor of our humanity, I think this is something we need to be concerned about, where we need to think about solutions to this. And again, as engineers, this is something that should be part of our consideration. I'm checking my watch. We don't have time to watch this video. It's a very short video of 4 minutes, but I encourage you, if you're interested in what I was just saying, EPFL solutions that address the Sustainable Development Goals, I would encourage you to check YouTube, where you can just put in either Tech for Impact written like this, or EPFL Showcase will both lead you to the same page, where you can see interviews with with top researchers from our institution that basically develop really thought-provoking solutions to these problems. We had an event last year, which was the Showcase 2030 event, where we wanted to show to the public, because as I mentioned, it's important to get the public on board and disseminate our knowledge. And we presented our tech solutions, our EPFL solutions, to the general public. And what was very interesting for me was we invited the United Nations Director General, Michael Müller at that time, and he gave the closing speech. And what he said, and I think this is something that that is very interesting, because he, as the United Nations Director General, he obviously sees a lot of solutions. And he said, what was presented this night is some of the coolest stuff I have seen in a very long time. And he was really excited. And he said, the solutions that you show here, and again, for instance, the cement, these are so powerful, so impactful, that we basically really need to join forces to bring them to the market. And this is something where we try also to involve our students all the time, that they become these change agents as well, that they help us to get our technologies out of the labs and really to have some impact beyond our campus. And with this respect, the program that I want to highlight, independent of the study program that you choose. So whether you're studying life science or material science, whatever you basic science, whatever you study, we have a program that is called EPFL Changemakers. This is extracurricular, so it's not part of a specific program, but open to all bachelor and master students. And you need to do that in your free time. That's the downside to it. This is a program. If you have an idea, you say, this is an innovative idea and I would like to realize it because I believe that this could have an impact, then this program is for you. And here we really give you all the skills and tools that you need to basically feel empowered to bring your solution to the markets. And this is one cool program. And I think what I'm also want to highlight is whatever program you study, really, it doesn't matter. All our first year bachelor students run through what we call the global issue class. And literally, this is part of your curriculum. It's not extracurricular, it's part of your curriculum. And each and every single student has to be exposed to this global issue class. And in this global issue class, you learn in much more detail than I was able to provide in this short time about all the problems we're facing and potential solutions. And you will have a project work together with some other students to basically to work on these problems. So this is something that we really offer for each and every single student, that you have to go through these classes. And I think it's very important because it really creates a basic mindset among all students that these are topics that you can address and that you feel empowered and knowledgeable about. Very, very last remarks from my side, and then we have some time for question and answer. We're living here at a very special place. So beyond living at one of the most beautiful lakes in Switzerland and the world, which I can very much recommend because I think student life here is post-COVID and pre-COVID it was, but it will be post-COVID, is a fantastic place to study here at the lake. And our EPFL community is known for fantastic parties on our campus as well. But beyond having really a beautiful campus and a very high lifestyle here, basically what is very special here is our academic ecosystem. Lausanne is home to many, many different academic institutes. So we have EPFL as the leading tech hub here in the area, but we also have UNIL, with whom we share a campus. We're very strong in, for instance, social sciences and others. We have SCHÜF, which is our university hospital. We have ECAL, our design school, our hotel school, IMD. And I think all of these taken together show that we are very interdisciplinary and we can join forces because, as I mentioned before, it's not technology alone that will save the world, but it will be technology and behavioral change and all of these. And this is where we collaborate, where we also bring our students from the different universities together in interdisciplinary programs to work on these solutions. And then the next special thing is Geneva is just 30 minutes down the road. And this is very special because it's home to almost all international organizations you can think of. It's home to the UN. It's home to almost all NGOs have a headquarter there, which makes it a very diverse and vibrant ecosystem addressing sustainability issues. And what we've been trying to build up in recent years is really to equip them with the technological solutions to address the problems that they are basically addressing with their work. So I believe we're very much in a unique ecosystem here. If you're interested in technologies that benefit society, I believe there's no better ecosystem than here, because the mixture of actors that come together in this ecosystem is really unique around the world. I will close with this one. The Financial Times is a magazine focused only on economic interests. Financial Times, as the name implies, is all about making money. Financial Times had an article last year, or this is their title page last year, which says, capitalism, it's time for a reset. Business must make a profit, but should serve a purpose too. This is huge. I mean, this is really, really huge, because it means that those that are most interested in just making economic and profit and returns realize that we're at a point in time where we need to go beyond making a profit. So you're living in a very extraordinary time where your skills and your knowledge is more needed than ever before, where what you're going to study, wherever you study, will affect in large parts how we're addressing the problems that I outlined before. And I invite you to embrace all of these changes as a chance for you to be involved, to feel empowered, and basically join us on this journey. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or also to just shoot me a message. You see my email here. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we're happy to learn more about what interests you and what is on your mind. And I see Simon says, no, I haven't seen The Biggest Little Farm, but I will write it down. Thank you so much for this suggestion. I always like these kind of documentaries. Thank you so much. And then we have Maria saying Changemakers is reserved for EPFL students. Yes, this is at this stage, it's a program dedicated to EPFL students, but we also will have a novel, and then actually you're the very first ones I'm talking about this. We're working on a summer school format that will be open for all Swiss students, international students as well. We will have a certain contingent for Swiss students, but we will open it for the entire world. But at this stage, Changemakers is reserved for EPFL students. It's a really dedicated program targeted to EPFL needs, yeah. Ah, that's very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that, Simon. I will definitely check that out. That's very, very interesting. So I thank you very much for all your attention. If you have any questions that I did not answer throughout this presentation, again, feel free to just send me an email. I'm happy to answer to this. I truly hope to see you at EPFL. It will not be I did not deserve that just on this, but I hope to see you here. I hope that we can work together, get a chance to work together, reach out to Tech for Impact and me if you're on the campus. And again, feel free to use our brain power to help you choose the right program for you and all questions you may have. I'm wishing you a very fantastic, nice day, almost weekend, and wishing you a nice day. Thank you very much.